Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Well, I've got some terrifying encounters to start the month of April off with. Before we get into these encounters, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. All those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version, written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny, is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those are in the description as well. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first part of the upload. This is 100% truth, and I'd take any lie detector test that was sent my way. This was in Scott County, Virginia. We lived in a house that had an outhouse, no indoor toilet. We had running water, but just couldn't get a proper septic system in here. The outhouse was up the hill a ways, about 30 yards. This was in a valley. The nearest neighbor was roughly 4 miles away. Good luck if you needed emergency services. We had 3 dogs. The biggest of them was a lab mix named Boo Bear. I'm going to split this up so it's not a wall of text. Boo was a very loyal and territorial dog. Didn't matter what time of the day it was, he'd go with you to that outhouse and sit outside. This was normal behavior for years. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about him and welling up in tears, man. He was the damned good dog. One night my mom needed to go and he went with her. We'd normally just walk up and do our business and head back and go back to sleep. We had no AC, just windows and fans. Boo followed Mom up there, and this time he was between Mom and the woods. There was a solid line of trees around the house that you couldn't see into at all. I've hunted it, but I'd get my ass back to the house before it even got close to dark. Boo felt or heard something. The more my mom tried to get up there, the more he growled. He had never behaved this way. My mom, a devout Baptist, swears on the Bible that she heard what sounded like grunting coming out of the woods. She could feel something either stomping or punching the ground. Punch a thing of flour. It's got the thud. That's what she described it as. My mom was raised by some serious hillbillies and isn't scared of anything in the woods, so she forced her way up there. She thought it was a deer, as they'll do that in rut season. Boo sat out there growling, and she said every hair on him was standing straight up. He wasn't barking. She could feel his growling, like, I don't know how to describe it, like you feel the bass from a subwoofer. She got done and came back down to the house. No other issues that night. A few nights later, a friend was staying at my house. He was one of the ones that was with me when we saw whatever it was that we saw. This was actually prior to this, about a year or two. He grew up poor like us, and he was a good dude. His mom and dad were great. Anyway, about 11:30 at night on a Friday or Saturday, because we had a 10 p.m. bedtime on weekdays, we were playing some Killer Instinct on Nintendo 64. Man, when I say this scared me, I thought my mom was being killed. We heard a scream and felt the noise come from the woods about 150 yards up the mountain. Buddy, I got goosebumps coming up like crazy right now. I didn't say shit. I kept playing and thinking my brain was playing tricks on me. 5 minutes later, it happened again. This time, it was maybe 75 to 100 yards up, and it was heading down. I stopped and asked RG if he heard that, and he said, fuck yeah, I heard it the first goddamn time, too. Man, I can describe it. Fight or flight kicked in, and we were in a panic. I checked on my mom and my little brother, and they were both fine. I woke up my little brother and told him what was going on, and we grabbed our rifles. I only had a 30-06. RG grabbed my 20 gauge, and my little bro LB, he had a 22. We parked our asses in the room where we were when we first heard it. When I say my heart was racing, it was doing a 100-meter dash. It had beaten Usain Bolt. We didn't hear anything for 30 minutes. Nothing. We had the windows open due to no AC, and we had the fans off. We started hearing a noise coming from the woods, just walking. It sounded like something was slowly plodding down the ridge to the house. I know it was not a cat. You will never hear a big cat. I've had cougars surprise me, and I never heard a thing. This was big, and it was making a lot of racket. We just kept sitting there, ears on alert. Scream again. This one shook our windows. Literally everything shook. There was nothing at that point we could have done. It was within 25 yards of our house, and we were petrified. Boo was just pacing back and forth. He wanted to get out. I didn't want him to go, and neither did little brother RG. He was our safety blanket at that moment. We decided to just hang out in there, and we started hearing the grunting. All I can say is, I've heard deer and rut. This was way too guttural. This frickin' feeling of dread came over us, and we all started bawling. We legit felt like we were gonna die. My mom finally woke up and came in there. She saw us all holding our guns and was like, "What the fuck are y'all doing?" I put my hand up to my face, and she saw we were crying, and I put my index finger to my mouth and shh. The grunting kept going louder and louder, then the pounding started. It wasn't hitting a tree or anything. It was hitting the ground, like punching the shit out of it. We could feel each hit. Mom said this was what she heard the other night, but that she didn't think much of it. Screw that, man. This was seriously scaring the shit out of me. The grunting and pounding stopped. Mom decided to let Boo out. Nikki and Bella, our other dogs, didn't do shit. Boo was just badass, and we were his family. He beelined it up there. That was it. We heard one yelp and nothing. We didn't hear anything else that night. For several days it was that way. Boo was gone, and we were all shook up. I think it was 5 or 6 days later, my stepdad went to use the outhouse, and laying next to the building was Boo. I swear on my life that this dog was literally torn apart. There were no bite marks. It was not a cat. He had literally been ripped apart limb from limb. I don't know what it was. It could have been a bear, I don't know. I know that we moved out of there a month later, and that damn place can't keep people in it anymore. I can't say that I smelled anything or anything like that. The outhouse smelled pretty darn gnarly. Definitely one of the worst experiences of my life. Today's second part of the upload. My boyfriend experienced something very strange, and I'm reaching out to see if anyone else has had an experience like this. This occurred in northwestern North Carolina in 2012. He and his partner at the time were sleeping in bed. They were in their bedroom that had French doors that opened to the backyard. The house was on a large piece of property with a stream that comes straight out of the mountain from an aquifer. He awoke randomly and saw 2 red eyes pass by the window of the French doors at somewhere near 7 to 8 feet off the ground. The door opened as a very intense vibration started, and he sat up to scream, and could not hear himself yelling. He could see his cat at the edge of the bed hissing. His partner didn't stir. The vibration caused him to fall back, and he passed out. He woke up face down on the bed, with his head turned toward the edge of the mattress. He was unable to move. A figure rose and was completely out of focus a few inches from his face. He states its motions were unnaturally fluid. He could see his surroundings, but could not focus on the creature. He explains that if the creature was out of focus in a photograph, he then unfocused his eyes and used his peripheral vision, and was able to clearly see the creature. He states it was brown or green coloring with scales, and a worn, pockmarked face, bright red eyes that glowed. When he saw the creature and was able to really decipher what he was looking at, it opened a very large mouth and gave him a gigantic toothy smile. He says he felt its energy, that it was amused at him for figuring out how to see it. The vibration began again as he watched the creature sink back out of view, below the edge of the mattress before passing back out from the frequencies. He awoke several hours later, and his partner had no idea anything had occurred. He said the entire time he felt no emotion, no fear, no anger, nothing. He says he knows something violent happened to him, and he thinks they wanted to take him, but didn't. Now he assumes this type of humanid creature came from underground and lives through the cave systems here. We know there's got to be some sort of opening in the land where the aquifer exits and the water flows down the property. This is his father's property, about 10 acres. We now live across the street, and I lock my doors out of paranoia now. The correlation between missing persons around the cave systems is unsettling, and I wonder if this has anything to do with it. Today's third part of the upload. When I was little, I was camping in my backyard with my family and my cousins. We lived on a woodland property next to a great pond. This couldn't have been a hoax, but I'm not too sure. So we came across a Sasquatch is what we think it was, but we're not really sure. It could have been a hoax, but anyways, it started growling. And I'm not sure if it was a Bigfoot or not, but it's what we thought it was. That's what it looked like when we got a glimpse of it. It wasn't a great glimpse. It began taking rocks and started throwing them at us, so we moved out of the way. The next encounter, I was sleeping in a camper. It was around 6. It's been years now. Me, my brother, my dad were staying at my uncle's house. It was a small house, and we didn't want to intrude, so we slept in the camper. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to the camper shaking and loud bangs on the door. Mind you, my uncle was in the hood. My family was in the camper with me, and the camper was shaking way too hard for it to be a human, unless the human had the strength of the Hulk. So, here I am, shaking in fear, and then it stopped. I opened the door to ask who was out there, and there was no one. My dad woke up and started yelling out the door and asked what I was doing. But when I told him, he didn't believe me. No one does to this day. I'm 14 now, and I don't think about it often, but was reminded of it when I saw something the other day on the internet. Today's fourth part of the upload. So I've always wanted to share this experience or encounter or what have you. I've only told a few people, just because I know nobody probably believes me. And to be honest, it took me a few years for me to come to terms with what I saw, but I still stand by it. When I was 19, I'm now 31, I lost my job at Coca-Cola plant in Deming, New Mexico, born and lived till I was 24. My older brother asked if I would be interested in working at the mines in Morricine, Arizona. He had been there for a month already with a friend. They lived in an RV park in Clifton, Arizona, and the mine wasn't far from where they lived. I jumped at the chance to get out of my boring-ass town, and in about 3 weeks, I had myself a job there. I would stay with my brother and his friend in the RV, and on weekends we would drive back to Deming to visit the family, etc. The RV park we stayed at was actually pretty interesting. On one side there was a wall where on the bottom was like a gorge, where it would venture off into streams through the town, and on the other a huge cliff. At night, the way the moon hit it, it looked like something out of a painting. The courtyard was huge, all the RVs wrapped around it. Where we were parked to get to the showers and the rec room, etc., was just straight 200 feet walk, majority through the big-ass courtyard. The thing that did suck there was the javelinas. Sometimes after taking a shower, you would have to haul ass back to your RV and wait for the rec room for them to leave outside. They would sometimes be wandering in the park. I remember one time my brother and friend thought it'd be funny to chase a javelina family off with bats. It was pretty hilarious until they got chased back. So one night after dinner, I decided to go outside and listen to music. I remember we had a picnic table bench that faced towards the courtyard. I'm sitting there with my headphones in, bumping SOAD, when I saw something coming into the courtyard. I thought at first it was a cat. It moved like one, but the body was longer. Then I saw longer ears, and was like, oh, maybe it's a dog. I'm watching it kind of move through the area, but it's already dark, so I couldn't really see perfectly. My headphones are still blaring. I decided to get off the bench and get its attention. I do that thing where you click your mouth to get a dog's attention, and I see the ears go up when it heard me. I'm kind of standing by my RV door and the table still, and I see this thing start coming towards me. But I see it's crouching but moving quickly. I'll never forget that. There I am, smacking my tongue at it like an idiot, and this thing's moving like a snake. It got about 80 feet from me before all of a sudden, it must have heard something in the distance because it stopped, and its head kind of cocked and decided to run off toward the cliffs. Here's the thing I'll never forget. When it ran off, it stood up. It looked like a very skinny boy had been wearing a fur, because when it ran off, the skin was dangling, but still attached to its head. It was so fast and strange. I just sort of stood there like, huh? I really had to just stand there and let my brain process or try to process what I saw. I told my brother and his friend. Of course, they didn't believe me. My brother said it was probably somebody's dog, but that still doesn't explain how it stood up. I told my mom. She's seen some crazy stuff in her time, but nothing like what I told her. I never saw anything like that in the RV park again. Still saw javelinas wandering about. That's about it. I worked for another few weeks, but got laid off and went back to Deming. I honestly don't know too much about shapeshifters or skinwalkers or Dogman, but I know I saw something that wasn't in the realm of normal. Today's fifth encounter. On my way home late one night from work, I almost always walk the train tracks because they're a straight shot toward my house. The train tracks ran past a cemetery, which was allegedly haunted. An old settler's cemetery. It's already dark, and it's been so for a few hours. There was no moon that night. As I walked near the cemetery, I started hearing muffled footsteps from behind me. But I really don't think too much of it. Plenty of other guys walk home this way as well. So I keep going, and the footsteps get louder and louder. About midway past the cemetery, I start getting nervous, and the steps start getting closer. So I turn and look behind me. And what I saw was the goat man, or the devil himself. I described this thing as a man who basically had goat hooves and horns along the lines of the mythical Pan, and this thing was heading straight for me. All the snow around this creature was instantly melting as it walked through it. I ran and screamed like a banshee. I could hear the clopping of this beast's footsteps behind me as it sped up to catch me while I was running. Finally, I get past the graveyard and see the thing stop right at the edge of the cemetery. I continue to run and stop and look back, and the creature just vanished. One of my older coworkers confided with me that there was a tale about a goat man many years ago. It was supposedly a Polish immigrant who disappeared one night, but returned as a creature several years later. There also have been UFOs and strange beings reported around the same time that man had vanished. This is a very bizarre and unbelievable story, I have to tell you. I don't know if you're familiar with the Skinwalker Ranch over here in Utah. I have a close relative that's pretty much a UFO guy in that area. He's been telling me these stories ever since I was a little kid, so I've been out at that ranch several times, and I was out there last spring, 2013, and nothing happened. We were around the ranch areas, and nothing happened. We went home, and that was a Friday night. On Saturday night, something did happen. What I later found out through a UFO relative, there were some young Indian kids. They were driving in a tall truck about 8 feet high, and they went up to the gate of this UFO ranch. They said that they saw an orb of light appearing in the window off above the gate, and I guess they turned on their lights, or they turned on their engine because they got scared. Then it got even brighter, and it went over their truck, and these kids, well, something hit their truck. The kids got scared, so they went down the road to the main road and got out of there, which I'm guessing was about 3/4 of a mile. They got out to look at the damage done to the truck, and for some reason the driver decided to be the passenger, and then the passenger was the driver. Apparently there were some girls with them in the truck. Well, once they got back in the truck, this is where it gets very unbelievable. A creature grabbed this kid, who was the driver, now the passenger, and pulled him out of the truck. It threw him around like a rag doll, bit him on the butt several times, and clawed him. Long story short, somehow this kid got back to the truck, and one of the kids took pictures of the creature. They got scared. They were able to get back into the truck. I mean, they drove down the road, talked to the young Indian police, because it's youth territory over there. The youth Indian police say there's nothing they can do about it because they're very well aware of the Skinwalker Ranch. So the next day, which would have been Sunday, they contacted my UFO relative, and he went down to investigate. Meanwhile, there was a shaman's wife, and the shaman was there blessing the kids that were involved in this. My UFO relative said that he saw the picture on the cell phone of this creature. He also saw the damage done to the truck. There was also scratched into the truck, "Die." And he also saw damage done to this kid in the bite marks. Now, that was very unbelievable for me to hear. The crazy thing about this is, a few months ago, I worked at a hospital, and one of my patients was actually the shaman's wife. And she was the one that was also there at the time that my relative was there to investigate. She told me exactly what my relative said, but in greater detail. The creature that she described, and also my relative said, had to be a tall creature because he would hold this kid out of the window. That's an 8-foot truck, and this creature had horns. It had red hair, it had a human-like face, but its mouth was distorted, and it came out like a wolf. It had claws, and it had bat wings. So my question to you, and I asked my UFO relative, is this a Skinwalker? And he said no, it's something totally different. And I also asked the shaman's wife, and she agreed that it was something totally different. Well, hell yeah, there's some scary encounters. And right there, that last one, I've always talked about the Skinwalker Ranch and the hunter who was up on a ridge, posted. And I believe he was hunting elk or something. And he saw this portal open. Now, it wasn't a portal that was attached to the ground. It was a couple feet off the ground. And it was like a black hole, like a cartoon opened up. And he saw this creature just fall out of it. And it was the most distorted, ugly-looking creature. He could not explain it. It didn't look like a Dogman. It didn't look like a Sasquatch. It didn't look like anything of this earth. And he said it ran, and then he ran. He wasn't chased by the creature. He ran in the opposite direction that it went. So, does Skinwalker Ranch have portals that opens to some odd dimension and some strange friggin' creatures come out? I believe it does. I really do. Do I think the military has any involvement? I don't think so. I think they have involvement now because they want to take advantage of whatever is out there and weaponize it, just like every other government wants to do in the world. But yeah, so whatever this creature was definitely not from the dimension that we live in. And I pray to the Lord that whatever is over in that dimension never comes over here, because we're going to be screwed if that happens. Who knows? Maybe the Dogman and the Sasquatch were put on this side of that dimension to keep us safe from those creatures that are over there. I don't know. These are little theories that kick around in my brain like a ball on a soccer field, just kicking around all the time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Also, if you guys could, please, I know a lot of you are very religious, please keep my dad in your prayers. My dad is a double kidney transplant survivor, and Monday he is going in for surgery for something else. And I'm very, very worried about him. So he just turned 71, and crazy enough, my best friend growing up, his mom on her 72nd birthday passed away. So please just keep my dad in your prayers, and yeah, that would be awesome if you could do that for me. With that, I'm going to bid y'all farewell, and have a great day. Oh yeah, it's April Fool's Day, but these encounters are true. See ya.